4,000 years ago, the Creator of the universe made an everlasting covenant with Abraham. All the land, from the Euphrates to the Nile, belongs to the sons of Israel. Shock waves will shake the earth as heaven reaches down to fulfill that promise. Every nation that attempts to interfere with that covenant will march onto the battlefield against the Almighty. Prepare for a rude awakening.
Shalom, Torah fans. This is Michael Rood welcoming you to episode 4 in the 11-part series, The Creator's Calendar and the Restoration of All Things. Learning to heed the still, small voice of the Holy Spirit and learning to separate the desires manufactured in one's own mind from the genuine leading of the Spirit is a journey of discovery that lasts a lifetime. In my experience, obedience appears to be the key. When you hear from heaven, or when you think that you have heard from heaven, obey, no matter what it costs you. That obedience is honored by heaven. When you have asked for bread, you can be confident that He will not give you a stone which looks like bread, but will bust all the teeth out of your mouth. If you are following your own desires, you will end up with a bloody mouth. But if you are following His leading, even though it may look bleak at times, He will never leave you or forsake you. Many people have derided me over the years for attempting to restore the Creator's calendar. My personal journey has been directed by a sincere desire to understand the Gospels and the ministry of my Lord and Messiah, Yeshua. I was looking for neither acceptance nor controversy, just truth. This divine quest has led me to doors that have opened which no man can shut. And I have also hammered on doors that were shut that I was powerless to open. In this series, I invite you to join me as I walk through the open doors that I pray will change your perspective of the Scriptures like no man could ever do. Join me in this amazing adventure of discovering the Creator's reckoning of time so that we, the children of light, might not be ignorant of His times and His seasons. As I was working on some of these mathematical, astronomical, and calendrical problems to understand the Gospels and times in antiquity, I was in the state of Texas working with a brilliant graphic artist, Richard Fike, and we were producing timeline proof charts as well as the astronomically corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. And it was during this period of time we were working month after month, sometimes around the clock for days, to produce these things as we were really discovering incredible treasures in the Gospels. And as we were doing this, I was having such a hard time because I was raised in a Western paradigm, a Western Gentile world, and I too was raised knowing nothing about the biblical calendar. And so dealing with these calendar issues, I had to step over into another world that I found a little bit difficult at the time. But I woke up one morning from a dream, and I don't even know what the dream was. But I turned to the wall and I began writing on the wall with my finger. And I realized as I made the marks on the wall with my finger, invisible marks, that all of a sudden I understood the biblical reckoning of time. I thought in Hebrew reckoning of time. It was like a shift that came about, and at that moment, I had understanding. The Greeks have a word for it as synesis. It is the point at which all the rivers flow together, all the little streams flow together and connect at one point where they make a powerful stream. And at that moment I had synesis, and it came from not my own intellect, it just came from waking up and the Almighty putting this in my mind and in my heart. It was there. Within 2 days, we found out that the house that we were living in at that time was being sold and would necessitate us moving. But as we were praying about where to move, the phone rang. It was someone from Minnesota. I'd never met him before. They told me that they were standing in line in a department store when the person in line in front of them turned around and started to discuss with them some of my teachings concerning the calendar and the feast of the Lord. And this person then got my number, called me up and said, I have a house up in Two Harbors, Minnesota, where I had been up there teaching before. In fact, it was the first place that I actually taught, and at that point left my work that I was doing and went on the road to teach full time. And when she called me up and said that we have a house up in Two Harbors and it's yours, it's fully furnished, and I said, well, how much do you need? And said, that's not an issue, just come up, move in, this place is yours. The Lord told me to call you and give you this place. Well, we packed up everything, moved up to Two Harbors, and when we got there, I stayed there one night, but something was not quite right. I didn't feel like this really was the place that we were to be. And I walked downtown Two Harbors, and I walked by a building that I'd walked by several times over the last few years. It was the old Two Harbors Theater. This time it was empty. And something had been drawing me about this building, and as I stood in front of it again and prayed about this building again, as I looked in there, I could see this is a place that I could work. And so after I prayed, I went a couple blocks over to the city hall, and I looked in the records to find out who owned the building. Their phone number was in the records. I called them up, and I said, I would like to buy the Two Harbors Theater from you. And the gentleman on the other end said that he was the owner of it, and that it was empty right now. And I said, I know, I was just there. And I said, but I have a problem. I don't have any money. And he said, well, what do you mean you don't have any money? And I said, well, I don't have any money. And he said, well, why do you want the theater then? And so I went on to explain that I saw that this place, as I prayed there, that I really felt that this could be used for ministry and for helping us in our work that we were doing with the biblical calendar. And he said, well, I bought this originally for my daughter and her husband, and I had it refurbished and renovated to be ministry headquarters for them, but everything fell through and it was never used for that. He said, I don't think money is the issue. Can you afford $1? And I said, I think I could get together $1. And he said, well, let's do it this way. I'll rent it to you for the first year for $1, and after that, then we'll talk about price. We'll see how it works for you. And so 2 days later, a 72-year-old man riding a white Harley Davidson came up to Two Harbors. We signed the papers. I got my $1, handed it to him, and it was a done deal.
All of your life you've gone to church and studied the Bible, but you've never learned about the Hebraic roots of your faith. You want a more meaningful relationship with God. You want the ability to truly understand His Word. We believe the message on this DVD is so life-changing that it will change your perspective of God and His Word that we are willing to send it to you for only a donation of shipping and handling.
Our lives have just been more fulfilled. The Bible makes so much more sense now. We can read it, we can understand it from a Jewish, a Hebraic perspective, because we really wanted to serve God the way that He intended to be served.
For the suggested donation of $6.95 for shipping and handling, you will receive this life-changing DVD. Order today by phone or online and prepare yourself for a rude awakening.